Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive, and you know how much we love those, into the world of Loropetalum chinense. You might know it by another name, a Chinese fringe flower. But the really fascinating thing about this shrub is its connection to the Chinese New Year. It might just make you rethink your holiday decorations.
It really is a unique connection, and our deep dive today comes from a blog post by Ang, who describes himself as an old software plumber turned gardening enthusiast. His writing is just full of these great insights.
I love that. An old software plumber, that's fantastic. So he had this blog, qianmeng.org, Musings of an Old Software Plumber. And in this particular post, he's gearing up for the Chinese New Year and planning some trips to local plant nurseries.
And it's at one of those nurseries that he stumbles upon the Loropetalum chinense,
Yeah.
and it just grabs his attention immediately.
He describes its color as this really striking reddish hue, and here's the kicker, he compares the shape to, get this, a Christmas tree. Okay, I have to ask, do you think he's onto something here? Can we consider this a naturally festive plant?
Well, it's definitely interesting how he connects the plant's visual appeal, that shape and color, with the traditional decorations we associate with Christmas, right?
Hmm.
Makes you wonder if maybe our idea of what's festive could be broadened to include more natural elements.
That's a really thought-provoking point. I mean, we usually think about festive decorations as things we add to plants, but what if the plants themselves could be the decorations?
Exactly. And the interesting thing is that Ang usually sees Loropetalum used in a more practical way, like hedges or borders.
Hmm.
But this time, he's seeing it in a whole new light.
And he even mentions wanting to try topiary with it, which I have to admit isn't something I know a lot about. Could you give us a quick overview of what topiary is all about?
Sure. So topiary is the art of training plants into specific shapes. It's done by clipping and pruning. And it has a really long history, going back centuries. You often see it in those really formal gardens with elaborate animal sculptures, and they're all made entirely of living plants. It's quite amazing.
Wow, so it's not just like trimming a bush into a simple shape. This is a serious art form.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of skill and patience to create those intricate shapes. And I find it fascinating that Ang, with his background as a software plumber, is drawn to this very ancient art form.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if his analytical problem-solving mindset will come into play as he explores topiary.
Right. It's almost like he's seeking out a new challenge, a new way to use his skills, but in a completely different creative outlet.
It really highlights how our past experiences, even our professions, can influence our interests and hobbies in unexpected ways. In Ang's case, it's led him to see this artistic potential in a plant he might have just walked past before.
Exactly. He's really challenging the conventional ways we think about Loropetalum. Instead of a hedge, he's envisioning it as this living sculpture, maybe even a symbol for the upcoming Chinese New Year.
Can you imagine a Loropetalum chinense shaped like a dragon to celebrate the Chinese New Year?
Now, that would be something to see.
Right. I'm suddenly looking at this plant with completely new eyes. But before we get too carried away with our topiary dreams, I think we should delve a little deeper into the cultural significance of Loropetalum, especially in the context of the Chinese New Year. What can you tell us about that?
Well, one of the key things to understand is
So, a Loropetalum dragon, huh? That's quite the image.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in topiary land, let's come back to the Chinese New Year connection. What makes this plant significant during that time?
Well, it's not that the Loropetalum itself has any specific symbolism for the Chinese New Year. It's more about how Ang connects it to the holiday through its color.
Ah, so it's that reddish hue that ties into the whole festive atmosphere.
Exactly. Red is such an important color in Chinese culture, symbolizing good luck, joy, and prosperity. All those themes that are so central to New Year celebrations.
So even though it might not be a traditional New Year plant, like a kumquat tree or something, the Loropetalum's color allows Aang to see it in that light.
Precisely. And this really highlights how much our personal and cultural backgrounds influence how we perceive the world around us. Aang's anticipation for the Chinese New Year makes him more attuned to that red color, and he imbues the plant with that festive meaning.
It's like the upcoming holiday is almost coloring his perception, literally.
I like that, coloring his perception. That's a great way to put it. And it goes back to that idea of seeing the familiar with fresh eyes. Aang's not just looking at a plant, he's seeing a reflection of the upcoming celebration.
This actually makes me think back to something you mentioned earlier about Aang's background as a software plumber. Do you think that kind of analytical mindset might influence his approach to topiary? Could he see it as a form of, like, organic problem solving?
That's a really interesting thought. Topiary definitely requires a lot of planning and precision, right? You have to
Yeah.
carefully shape the plant over time to achieve the desired result. So perhaps his experience in software, with that focus on logic and structure, could lend itself to topiary.
Yeah, maybe he'll approach it almost like an algorithm, mapping out the steps and making adjustments as the plant grows. It's fascinating to think about how these seemingly different fields can actually intersect and inform each other.
Absolutely. It speaks to the interconnectedness of knowledge and the surprising ways our diverse experiences can shape our creative endeavors.
So we started with a simple observation about a plant at a nursery, and we've uncovered all these layers of cultural significance, artistic potential, even insights into the human mind. Who knew Loropetalum chinense could be so thought-provoking?
It just goes to show there's always more to discover, even in things we think we know. Sometimes all it takes is a shift in perspective, a willingness to see the world with fresh eyes.
Speaking of fresh eyes, you mentioned that Loropetalum is often used for hedges and borders. Do you think there are other plants we commonly see used in those ways that might have hidden artistic potential for topiary?
Oh, I have no doubt. I mean, take the common boxwood, for example.
Yeah.
It's known for its dense foliage and tolerance to pruning, so it's a classic choice for topiary. But beyond those traditional geometric shapes, imagine the possibilities. A boxwood shaped like a majestic Chinese guardian lion, or maybe a whimsical spiral that invites you to wander through a garden.
I can already picture a whole menagerie of boxwood animals. What about a plant like rosemary? It has that lovely fragrance and a more informal cascading form.
Oh, rosemary would be beautiful for topiary, especially for creating fragrant spirals or even cascading waterfalls of foliage. And the scent would add another dimension to the experience, engaging multiple senses.
Now that you mention it, I have seen some incredible lavender topiary. Those purple mounds are just stunning. It seems like the possibilities are really endless.
They really are. And that's what's so exciting about topiary. It's an art form that lets us collaborate with nature, shaping living plants into works of art that evolve and change over time.
And it doesn't have to be limited to, like, grand formal gardens either. Even a small topiary creation could add a touch of whimsy and personality to a balcony or a patio.
Exactly. It's about bringing a bit of artistry and intention to how we interact with the natural world, whether it's a vast landscape or a single potted plant.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired to maybe try their hand at topiary, what advice would you give them? What would be a good starting point?
Well, I'd say start with a plant that's known to tolerate pruning well, like a boxwood or a yew. Those are a little more forgiving, especially when you're first starting out.
That makes sense. So, no pressure to jump right into that rosemary masterpiece on the first try.
Mm.
What about the shape? Is it better to start with something simple?
Yeah, starting with a basic geometric shape is a good idea, like a ball or a cone. You can even use those wireframes, to kind of guide your pruning as you get the hang of it.
Oh, that's a helpful tip. So you're not just going at it freehand. You've got a little bit of a structure to help you out.
Exactly. And another thing to remember is patience. Topiary is all about shaping the plant gradually over time. You're working with the plant's natural growth habits.
It's almost like you're engaged in a slow dance with nature, a collaboration, rather than trying to force it into something it's not.
I love that analogy. The
Yeah.
slow dance. It really captures the essence of topiary. You're nurturing and guiding the plant, letting its beauty unfold in this new artistic form.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Loropetalum chinense, we've really come a long way. We started with a simple blog post and ended up exploring cultural perspectives, artistic potential, and even getting some practical gardening advice. What are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember?
I think Eng's story is a great reminder that there's always more than meets the eye. Even with the most familiar plants, our backgrounds, our experiences, they all shape how we see the world. And sometimes, just a small shift in perspective can help us discover something new and inspiring.
And we learned that even a plant that's often used for hedges, like Loropetalum, can be a source of artistic expression, especially through topiary, which is this ancient art form that's still so relevant and accessible today.
Absolutely. And for those listeners who are feeling inspired to give topiary a try, remember those tips. Start with a forgiving plant, a simple shape, and a lot of patience.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll see our listeners creating their own Loropetalum dragons to celebrate the Chinese New Year.
That'd be quite a sight.
Until then, everyone, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep looking at the world with fresh eyes. You never know what amazing things you might discover.